Fuck it. We'll do it live. We'll do it live. What's up, ladies and gents? People from the past, probably, if you're watching this. Look at this. Look at the hair, how it's like, whoop. And this one, how it's like, oh, kind of trying. Let me just fluff this up a little bit. There we go. Get that volume in here. Ugh. Ugh. Being Mexican, you end up with a lot of hair that you don't know what to do with sometimes. So, you know, Mexican problems, they say. Mexican problems. But at the same time, you can just eat a taco. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. It just annoys me how asymmetrical it is, but whatever. What's up? It is Friday, May 1st. Happy May. And we are going to go over a few different things. Some of this stuff is going to be like more back-end stuff, like how to audit a build and how to create a report on the stuff that you audited for that build, and then how to sell that build also. And I noticed that a lot of people, when it comes to vibe coding, actually have a lot more questions about this stuff than the actual technology itself. Yes, the technology is something that you need to figure out, but technology is kind of Googleable. You know what I mean? You can ask Claude, you can ask ChatGPT how to, set up an API, how to connect an MCP, how to have an edge function, how to open a Vercel account, all these different things. But it's a little harder to you can step by step that stuff, but it's a little harder to go through the business side of things. How do you sell these products? How do you talk about the value of these products? How do you actually, make sure that you have a contract that makes sense for how you build, right? Because a lot of vibe coders that I know, a lot of people that are in this world, whether you came from a development background or didn't, or they just picked up code or you've been coding for your whole life, you guys like to build. You guys like to build. You guys like to tweak. You guys like to design. You guys like to engineer. You guys like to solve that problem. But the problem of getting someone to pay you for it and getting someone to see the value of it is a little bit more difficult. And I have experience. I have experience with sales, specifically in high ticket sales, in even dealership sales. I used to work at a motorcycle dealership and making hundreds of calls per day. And even at a work from home job, I had also another one where I was doing hundreds of calls per day. So I have a lot of repetition, and I kind of just grinded out the part of me that suffers when I hear the word no, or when I have a situation where there's tension in the call, or when you're delivering your price and you have someone questioning it, and you sit there and you have this instinct to try to justify yourself and stuff like that. And now a lot of that has gone away, and I've been able to more calmly sit in that pocket of being able to explain the value of what I do, explain the value of what they're going to get, without getting into like a justification mode or anything like that, right? You explain the value before the price, and it ends up being so that you're not justifying it after the price, right? Very simple concept, but it's hard to do in practice, right? So that is something that I'm realizing a lot of people have trouble with, and that's okay, right? Because it is fixable, right? And it's fixable. And we're going to make sure that we clean you up, my little man, my little boy, my little homie. I'm going to teach you the things that I know, and they're not going to be every single thing you need to know, because some of these things you can only get by experience, and you have to gain experience in the situations that you've never seen before to even understand what applies, what you need to get to fill into your skill gap, and a whole lot more context. So while I can teach you like the fundamentals of sales, the fundamentals of marketing, you need to learn how to do these things by doing these things. It's the unfortunate truth or the fortunate truth, whichever way you look at it, because it's, can be fun. It can be fun to talk about these stories where you messed up a sale, or you said something weird on the call, or you had an awkward moment, or you held out just long enough in the silence for the prospect to say yes to your proposal. So there's a lot of good stuff that I can help you with. But again, these are going to be the fundamentals and apply to your situation. It's probably going to feel different when you're actually doing it, right? But that being said, all these gurus, the Jeremy Miners, the Grant Cardones, the Elliot Holt, not Elliot Holst, the other Elliot, Andy Elliott, these individuals are very good at sales. But again, they would tell you the same thing, that you need reps, right? They have information that I don't have. They have information. Well, I'll put it this way. I've learned from a lot of these people, either directly or indirectly, by getting their sales assets and their trainings, or by being in some of their trainings through someone that I was working for. So I've gotten a lot of the lessons distilled from them, and still it's the same thing. They gave me the fundamentals. But I still had to go out there and apply them. Then I had to go and look up what problem that I still have, find that problem, inject it into my process, repeat that, and do that over and over and over and over again. And yes, if you have someone like that over your shoulder, that process can be done faster, but that can be quite expensive, and it can be a process that you might not need to go through if you're not going to be like a professional salesperson. If you're going to use sales in your day-to-day life, but the majority of what you do is building, vibe coding, then you just have to learn sales good enough to get yourself to that next prospect that's going to say yes to you, right? So I probably wouldn't even recommend doing that sort of thing, because I spent a lot of time in sales thinking I was going to be in sales for a long time, like literally sales management or sales director or sales operator, all these different titles and terms. And I thought I was going to be in that world for quite some time. And so I thought there was enough of a use case for me to be able to, or enough of a use case for me to be there and to just basically spend my time and money learning that stuff. But I'll tell you something. Selling for other people is its own world, and selling for yourself has a lot of the same things that you can transfer over, but it does have a new set of kind of difficulties. It has a new set of difficulties in terms of being able to do it all without your nerves affecting everything. Okay, because again, fundamentally, it's a very simple process. But when your nerves get involved, when you feel like you're on the line, when you feel like it's your money, it's your bank account or something like that. And to be honest with you, it could be one of both things. You could be the type of person where it feels more intense to sell for someone else because, you don't want to let down your boss, or you don't want to let down the company. And you have this kind of sense of responsibility, and you have this idea that, you want to do a good job. The other type of people might be the people that get more nervous selling for yourself because it's your bank account. You're not selling the, individual commission, you're selling the entire thing. And on top of that, you have to sell the fulfillment too. You have to fulfill on the thing, right? And fulfilling on the thing has its own set of nervousness, because if you're, selling a little bit outside of your comfort zone, which I often recommend, then you have that issue of being like, oh my God, am I selling something that I'm not going to be able to deliver on? And that causes its own nerves. So they both have their pros and cons of like the nervousness side of things, right? They both have their pros and cons about, feeling comfortable versus uncomfortable in doing them. So if you want to learn sales for vibe coding projects, I'm going to go through a little bit of my process as far as the preparation for that today. I'm going to go through a document that is my prep document that's going to turn into a proposal. That's going to be the thing that I send off to the client that they're going to digest before the call where I hop on and we talk about that and any sort of next steps forward, right? Because right now in this project, I'm sitting in that pocket where I've had a paid audit of what they currently have. In that paid audit, we've discovered a lot of potential to build something, but I need to sell them on that next something. And that next something is going to be a lot more than the initial audit. So I have to make sure that we are deriving or we are pulling out all the opportunities to show the value that we can deliver, and also talk about the technical side in a way that is simple enough for them to understand, but deep enough for them to know that we know what we're talking about. Okay. So let me set up my screen here so that we can share this out to the world. And I won't be sharing anything too personal, you know what I mean? So give me 1 second. Let me open up some stuff. I believe we are all ready to go. Okay, here we are. This is school. I just want to get back to this guy real quick, and then we're going to move into the next part of this build. This is a post that I posted about how promotion is the hardest part about business, because you are spending time on streams like this, or Instagram, or Twitter, or LinkedIn, or whatever, and you're sending out a lot of things and not getting a lot of things back for a lag, right? There's a period where people are not liking your stuff, commenting your stuff, reacting to your stuff, and it can feel difficult because you're just not getting the traction that you need to get people to trust you at first, like you, and then want to pay you money to build what they're asking you to build, right? And so I just made this comment. I think a good comment about that here in the schoolers community. This is not my community. This is the general school community. And here, this guy is talking about how he's loving the conversation. And he's also figuring out the balance between promoting and proving as well, right? It's like, how would I say this? I'd say leaning into the communication method, communication method that feels best. If you like talking, use YouTube. If you like quick notes, use X. On. Let me do this. Boom. So this is what I would say if you're in this position and you're thinking about promoting your service as well, you should lean into the communication method that feels the best, right? So if you like talking like this, use YouTube, do streams, do long form content, and potentially you could even do like Instagram shorts or YouTube shorts where you're talking to your camera. But let's just say general purpose, use YouTube. If you like dropping quick notes, use X. Quick notes is very scrollable. So if you're good with that, then do it. And if you like visuals, use Instagram, right? And each one of these platforms can be like hacked. Like you can hack a thumbnail and a title on YouTube. You can kind of create a little bit of a formula to create this like hook on X. And same with Instagram. You can do like hooks in the captions and the visuals and stuff, go towards like gory or kind of like more sensationalism. And that is like good technique, I will say. But if it feels like you're not able to say your message through that, I would say start with your message first to find your tone. And once you find your tone and your message and your way of saying things, then move into the techniques on top of that. Because I think that a lot of people, unfortunately, myself included, have seen these, books on persuasion, books on sales, books on marketing, or articles and profiles and all that stuff on marketing, how to make sure that you get like the top of your the top reaction that you could get. You try to figure out how to get the top reaction that you can get, and you end up sounding like a marketing book, right? You end up sounding like a marketing book. You end up sounding like this persuasion coach or something like that, or this persuasion guy, without actually talking about what you're interested in or your main idea or your own personality shining through. And I think that that is unfortunate because it really dims out the personality underneath it, right? And we can talk about personal brand and corporate brand and all these different things all day long. But at the end of the day, it's an individual with an idea expressing it in some way. And you apply that to a business problem, right? So we're talking about vibe coding. There's so many elements to talk about with that. And you can even get a little bit broader and start to integrate other things. Like, let's just think of cats. How do cats relate to vibe coding? Well, cats go around and they are very intentional with where they go, and they end up sitting in the sun, right? And the thing about vibe coding is that you want to be intentional about the things that you do, and you got to realize that some things are going to be exposed. If you have bad code, it's going to be exposed like the sun shining down, and the sun can shine down and expose, some harsh things about the cat's fur or their situation and how they maybe aren't in the best shape, or it can also be something that is very warming and helps the cat. So it's a very bad example, I'd say. It's a very mediocre example of relating one thing to another. But as you can see, you can have fun with it. You can relate it to a bunch of other things. You can start to have a lot of fun with it, and then you can start to inject your personality, right? So that being said, that was just me having a conversation here on Schoolers. If you want to see my school, this is Vibe Code Cowboys, where I go through all the fundamentals of how to build these things, and then also how to be in the market with these things, meaning how to promote, how to sell, how to deliver, how to manage clients. All these different individual things are inside here, and you can make sure you check it out at the link in the description. Okay. If you want to join, come on down. We'd love to have you. I'll tell you as much as I can about what we're doing, and we can make sure that we both capitalize this space together. I think it's going to be sensational. You know what I mean? Regardless, well, I'll say this. Vibe coding is an exciting space. There's a lot of hype around it, and there's a lot of potential for it. The truth underneath it is that the craft underneath it is called, the truth underneath it is that the skill is called product design and engineering. Product design and engineering has been around for a long time, and it's just gotten this major uplift with AI coding capabilities. So we're having a lot of new people come in and be able to create new things, but the skill underneath it remains fundamental. I've learned a lot through my time in doing graphic design, website design, other little side projects for myself, and I've injected that into this. And the way that my brain and personality works, I really find this to be a fascinating problem to solve. So I enjoy this, and I'm going to be here for the long haul. And this is the thing that I've zoned in on in the AI revolution. If you want to join, and if you've been wanting to do something with AI, but you don't know what, this could be a potential avenue for you. There's broad AI agencies where you can go and understand different things like automations, connections, chatbots, and even a little bit of software, or you can zero in on something. And that's what I'm doing. I'm zeroing in on product design and engineering fueled with AI. Okay. So if you want to learn more about that stuff, again, come into the classroom, check it out, and then we can talk about how to get you from your first project all the way to your first client, all the way to doing this to a full-time professional like myself. Okay. That being said, we're going to close this up so it's not distracting us, and we're going to move into the actual build itself here. Okay. So yeah, I don't think there's anything, no, there's nothing too crazy, right? So I had a previous video going over my initial thoughts on a front page and the initial kind of onboarding sequence of the app that we're talking about here. Since then, I've dove in. Since then, I've dived into a lot of different components of that build on the code basis. On the code side of things and the front side of things. So every app has a front end and a back end. And if you want to do this thing, you have to know how to do both. So going through this audit, you can see the 6 main categories I focused on were core functionality, user experience, code base, cleanliness, database architecture, authorization and security, and scalability. These to me are like the big pillars, because if you can get these things right, then you basically have a fully functioning app. You have a good experience for the user and you have a good backend for the owner. Okay. So I just want to go through these parts one more time after a conversation that I had today with this client to make sure that we're speaking kind of to their language and to the way that they see what this product could be. There's a lot of potential functionality that I saw by looking at the code and looking at the product myself, but always getting it from the user or the owner of the code base themselves is going to be the best way to make sure that you're building for them precisely and you build the solutions that they're looking for, right? With any sort of sales process, the more you can understand the problem, the better you can speak to the solution. And in fact, if you don't spend time on that, people can still hear what you say, but it just doesn't land as deep because they don't feel like they're being understood. And I know that can seem subjective. That can seem like, why would that even matter? But it's a part of the human process of getting someone to trust you as a solution person, right? If I talk to a plumber and he doesn't ask me at least a few questions about what is the water doing? Does it turn on and off when you move the faucet? If you shake it a little bit, does it do this? If you tap this, does it do that? If he's not asking me a few questions like that, I don't trust his capabilities to even diagnose an issue. And I don't really like the product. I wouldn't like the idea of him coming in and starting to do stuff or charging me money, especially not charging me any money, right? So that being said, we're going to move into this here. And I'm going to read some of this stuff and talk about why I have it here. And I'm probably going to have to make some adjustments. The big thing too is we want to turn this into a deck. So this is one example of a deck that I had made up. Very simple, just very straightforward about what the problems are, how we would target to change those problems, and how we would move into the next step of this process, right? You want to outline what you found. You want to outline the solutions to what you found, and you want to outline how you're going to go about putting those solutions into place. But I also wanted to make this a bit nicer to look at. So I created a version that has more color. Is this the one? Yeah. I also wanted to make this a bit nicer to look at. So I created this version that has a bit more color, has a bit more organization, and overall is more scannable. Most people will look at this stuff and just scan it and then go back into the deep dive. Your brain does an initial scan to see what's worth going back into. And so I want that scan to be clean and good. I want that scan to invoke this feeling of value and cleanliness. And also the fact, also keep in mind that what we're going to be doing for this individual is building interfaces. And part of those interfaces is going to be the design of it. And so if you can design a good deck, you're also showcasing your capability to design a good interface in a subtle way, because any sort of like visual taste that you can display to these individuals is going to show them that they can trust you with their front end, right? Because their front end, their storefront, is part of what you're building. You're not just doing the code, you're not just doing the function, you're not just doing the data, you're also doing the front end, okay? Very important to remember that product design, vibe coding, all this stuff is two sides, right? It's the UX and UI, and it's also the code and the functionality. And you got to be good at both and display that you're good at both. And the deck, I think, is a very important tool to show that. So we got this deck to this place where you can have these different colors, you have the different ideas, but it was still too clunky. So I ended up making a different version here where I really just streamlined it. I got rid of the multiple colors in this area. I got rid of the multiple tags in this area. And I got rid of all the kind of other excessive stuff here in this area. And so this one is my favorite so far. I think it's going to be the cleanest to make sure that we can display everything that we're doing in a proper way. And then we can outline the different gaps in their current build and then talk about the solutions. Okay. So now that that's said, I want to go through my notes that I took today. And I'll show you what those notes were. So we had a conversation today. So me and my partner had a conversation today with this client, and this was a client, or this conversation was helping us understand the user experience and the goals for these particular platforms. It's one thing to open up the code base and to see what they have going on underneath the hood, but you also need to just ask them, what would you like to experience this as, right? Because even though I can get a car in and diagnose its problems, I can see that it has low tire pressure, it has a dent in the rear, it has a muffler that's kind of loud, it has an issue over here that's kind of a leak, and the AC is a little bit low, and the radio doesn't have an antenna. There's all these problems. But if I don't ask the person how they drive their car and what they like to use, then I don't know which one they care about. Because maybe you have a person that they don't listen to the radio, they have their headphones in the whole time, and they just have a long commute that's in the sun. So we need to make sure the AC is there and the tires are taken care of, right? Or you might have the person that doesn't even leave their apartment complex. They just go into their car to chill out at the end of the day, maybe do something, I have a guy. Okay, so this is coming from a real story. All right? I live in Arizona where weed is legal, and I have a guy in my complex who I don't really see leave the facility very often. He goes in there, has a little bit of a session, if you know what I mean, listens to some music and has a good time, right? More power to him. But if you have someone like that, then that person is not going to care as much about the tires or the antenna because he's using Bluetooth, and AC is kind of an okay thing, but more than anything, you just got to make sure that the car is okay sitting in idle, right? So that's what I mean by making sure that you understand the user experience. You're not just building to have perfect code, and you're not just building for your vision of what the people want. You're building to have something that speaks to what that individual wants. Okay. So I'm going to do this here. I'm going to pop this open here, actually. Where is this here? There we go. There we go. So that being said, these were the core questions that I asked the individual. What are the core users for this platform? Or who are the core users for this platform? What part of the day or week do they use this and how many times? What are the 1 to 2 things users do most with this? What are the biggest frictions or frustration points with these workflows? What does the ideal product look like in the next 3 months, right? I asked some version of these, and I also went with the conversation a little bit to understand what was going on. So in this particular case, they're having 3 different types of SOPs, and it's going to be the operator or the maintenance individual at a treatment plant. It's a water treatment facility build. And essentially what they have is SOPs for particular pieces of equipment, and then SOPs for a process that can contain multiple pieces of equipment, right? These types of documents are typical admin work where an individual or a company needs to outline the specific steps of what someone does so that when someone new comes into place, they can look at that document, understand what they need to do, and then move forward. They don't need to be trained for months and months from an individual that has all this information in their head and they don't know how to explain it very clearly. So the app that we're building is going to be 2-pronged. One is just for the storage and creation of these sorts of things. But 2, it's also going to be kind of like an SOP writing assistant. So it has to help someone get the information from their head, display it in a very simple way, let them edit it in a way that seems clear and simple and not overwhelming, and then clean that up, store it, and be able to basically export that or display that to an individual that is going to be taking up that place. Okay. So a couple other notes here is that there is a third type of SOP called the lab SOP that's very detail heavy, but it's okay if that's built out later, which is good to know because again, if I were to go in there and talk about this one as going to be like the main focus, they wouldn't feel that we were paying attention to what they really needed. Another couple of notes here. There's two different roles, one who's a creator, one who's a viewer. The use case is typically going to be a huge batch, but there is kind of a drip basis as well. They're thinking that they're going to structure this as a subscription product with 1 to 25 SOPs in one layer, 25 to 50 in another layer, and so on and so forth. And then they gave me some examples of different types of kind of tiers of individuals that might use this. One level is somebody that is above this product, so they wouldn't be using this. They'd have their own internal custom software or their own person to handle this, a full-time individual to handle something like this. And the people that we ideally go for are like the medium, small size businesses that are right now using Excels or Word docs, and they're probably doing it in a disorganized fashion, and it's hard to modify. And I tried to drill in on how much this type of work typically costs a company for two reasons. I wanted to figure out what problem this product would solve for the end users, and I wanted to understand how much those users would be enticed to use this product. And then that would help me understand how much I could charge for building this product. Because if they have an expected return on their industry, then I can see an expected return from me to them. Okay. And last thing here was a couple of notes about the kind of individuals that were going to be using this, where they're very talented in what they do. They have a lot of industry experience and mechanical knowledge, but they're not able to put that into documents, or they're just not willing to put that into documents, which is very common, right? You have people that do things that are very technically precise and very technically high level, but they're unable to explain it in a very clear level. And so people can't learn what they do. And you know this, right? If you've ever had to fix your car and you've looked around for different YouTubers and stuff, you probably naturally gravitate to the individual that has a better speaking cadence, the ability to break down ideas simply, and doesn't get lost in the weeds of, millimeters and bolts and very precise things that are kind of industry knowledge. It's very like, dumbing it down is one way to think about it, but also just relating it to people, right? That's why an educator is considered a good educator. That's why trainers are considered good. Right? If you're in the AI space, you want someone to really dumb it down and not start talking about APIs and MCPs and all these other things. So this app would be doing that for individuals. Okay. So now that I've looked at all this, now that I've looked at all those notes from the call, I want to go into this document that I have here. Just double check everything is the way that I want it to be. Basically, are we highlighting the key points that come up? And are we talking about the solutions that would make the most sense for that? And then once that's done, we're going to transfer this into the deck and make sure that it's clean and simple and easy to read. And I'm thinking that the deck is going to be the first thing that people open up and see as kind of this broad scanning type of pass. And then the deck is going to be where they dive in a little bit more and then see the reasoning and all that stuff behind that. So once again, starting off with the core functionality, upload and processing. So I'm going to rewrite these things to be just a bit more straightforward, right? So this line here, post uploading files and all that stuff. I actually want to go ahead and go like hero section, but I think I have that somewhere else. So I actually want to move the user experience into above the core functionality. I think that makes more sense because when you think about like the first thing, you're thinking about the first thing that you see. Okay, so I want to point to the first thing that the user sees, and then we can talk about core functionality. I think that's actually makes more sense in terms of like how a person uses this. So here we are. User experience, the hero section. The hero section is the most important real estate on any page. It must immediately convey purpose without overwhelming the user. Currently, 2/3 of the screen of the hero section is spent on an icon, title, and subtitle that explain very little. More points. Reduce visual noise and explain the product as simply as possible to new users. Potential H1, potential H2. Onboarding. First screen is a terms of use modal with a checkbox. Maximum friction before any value is delivered. Remove it. Replace with a passive inline no. Second terms and conditions page immediately after. 2 consent screens before reaching the product is too much, or before reaching the product is too much. No clear explanation of the sign-up process, plans of access, pricing, usage limits, and reasons to sign up are all missing. Test LLM buttons or bulk dev artifacts removed before any client use. Show terms modal is doing the work that hero section should do. Navigation. Header is missing a reliable home button. Header is missing a dashboard button. Too many modals throughout. Terms of use, T and C, what is complete SOP, how it works, lab procedure generation, others with no active trigger. Modals are hidden with information, target near 0, move content inline, or delete entirely. So the thing about something like this is like, I imagine that our client is going to be reading these paragraphs and then is going to be scanning through these things just to support the paragraphs, right? So what I'm doing is I'm focusing a lot of my attention on these paragraphs to make sure that I'm talking about what I'm talking about in the bullets. So it's like an abstract for any sort of scientific paper. So here we have a general idea of what we're going through. Then we have like a general assessment of what I think, which is essentially that it's functional, but there's a lot of stuff that is bloated and heavy and basically can be trimmed down and simplified. So for the user experience, we also are saying the same thing. Then onboarding, I don't know if I want to add in a paragraph here. I do want to add a paragraph here. Onboarding, the steps to a first successful usage of the product are key to convert and retain paying users. The process to get to the first good outcome are the process to get to the first good outcome is what the user will judge most. I'm going to say most. Does that make any sense? Well, I'm already saying this here. It's the most important. The steps to the first successful usage of the product are key to converting and retaining paying users. Customers should be simple, reliable, and clear. The following changes will help with that. The first The screen opens. The app opens with a terms of use modal and a checkbox. This is too much friction before any value is delivered. Remove it. Replace with a passive inline note. An additional terms and condition page shows soon after. I don't know or remember when, so I'm just going to say soon after. 2 consent screens before reaching the success state is too much. No clear explanation of the sign-up process, plans, or access. Pricing, usage image, and reasons to sign up today will reduce conversion greatly. Test LLM buttons or bolt dev artifacts. Remove before any client use. Show terms modal is doing the work that the hero section should do. Good. Navigation. This one might not need a paragraph. I think it's just very straightforward. I might just say, how easy is it? How easy is it for a user to get from one screen to find what they need and navigate to it? Header is missing reliable home button. Home page layout. Key feature should be 3 max. I would actually put this in the hero section. Okay. This needs to be somewhere else entirely. Okay. I think I'm just going to do I think this kind of goes here. I'm going to turn this. I'm going to move this. I'm going to move this here. And then we're going to move this here and then there. Okay, that's making more sense. I don't always like talking about like the subjectiveness of things like the design. I like to try to point it to more objective things like minimizing user confusion, creating a pleasant and consistent experience across the platform. And again, because you're not trying to sell the fact that you can make something look good, you want to sell that it's going to minimize confusion, that it's going to lead to more usage, that's going to lead to return customers and things like that, right? That's the part of graphic design that I was never able. Oh, shoot. That's the part of graphic design that I was never able to really go into and like confidently sell because it's just so up to the end user's kind of situation. So I end up in a position where I'm just like upset and frustrated with individuals because they are telling me that they want something and then they end up not liking it. When it's UX though, you're able to do it in a lot cleaner and simpler way of like, hey, this is going to make sure that your users actually use the thing. And yeah, we can talk about colors and fonts and stuff, but having things clearly laid out, like a magazine title being in a certain place, has a purpose behind it. And I always like that idea of design rather than just it looks good or it feels good. Okay. So the process is just to go through all of this, right? I'm going to talk line by line on the different thoughts of what I'm going through. Um, Something did come up, so I have to go ahead and go and take care of that. I'm going to come back later. We're going to continue where we took off, and then we're going to move into designing the deck. All right. Talk to you later if you're here.